I did all this.
You say what now? Okay. Cool, cool, cool.
I'm talking.
All right, it should be back. Okay, cool. Yeah. You said 16. Yeah. He's the mouse.
We should take a picture too.
Hold up, that's a new one. Oh, that's right. Oh, Jimmy, you were at the talking to Tipsy. Fuck too much. Because he told me about this. Put it in my phone.
If I can be,
You said it's good or bad.
Hey, how's that angle working for you? Is that good? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll leave it where it is. Yeah, we're good.
Thanks everybody for coming. We're gonna get started. So take your seat. We're doing our last checks for audio. We are gonna try to record the session so that it can be available for people who aren't here. Yeah, you're talking to the whole room, Scott. Okay.
Is that good?
Good evening.
All right,
My
you
name is
gotta start.
Kara Marie, and I am a member of the St. Charles County, St. Charles Democrat Central Committee. I should probably know what the name of it. Don says it all the time. I represent Mugi Township, and I also ran, in November for House District 104. And I'm currently running again in House District 104. So I just retired Tuesday. After 2 years. I taught middle school for 30 years. Most people, I don't know, give some kind of reaction about teaching, middle school in general. But I figure, if I can deal with, I happen to like 12-year-olds mentalities, but not the 12-year-old mentality of grown adults. So I figure if I can, kind of control and learn and teach middle schoolers when they don't want to, that I hope I can, make a difference in Jeff City, like I've made a difference in over 3,000 children's lives, I think.
Right.
In 30 years, it's about that. I am the math teacher, but I'm estimating. I'm here tonight to kind of introduce our guests, and our first person of interest would be Mr. Don Mooney.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Get comfortable, get cozy. Well, there.
Oh, hey, Ian.
You're good. As Sarah said, my name is Donald Mooney, and I am the chairman of the St. Charles County Democratic Central Committee. All right. The Central Committee is the county arm of the Democratic Party. Okay. All of us are duly elected officials. Some of us appointed by those duly elected officials, and we take care of the business of Democrats in the county. Yes, sir.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're in the library, so I guess I have my library voice. All right. So we'll go from the top. Again, I am Donald Looney, and I'm the chairman of the St. Charles County Democratic Central Committee. Okay. The Central Committee is the county arm of the Democratic Party. We're all duly elected officials. We got to get on the ballot, and you got to vote us in and things of that nature. And those who aren't duly elected have been appointed by the members of the Central Committee. All right. Our main priority is recruiting, cultivating, and training candidates to run for office. And we offer them as much support as possible without breaking any ethical violations. Okay. So that may look like logistical support, people support, training, things of that nature. We do it all here. If any of you are interested in getting down with us, speak with us afterwards. We can do that. We do have a few township seats that are open. And if you're interested in diving all the way in and serving on a deeper level, let us know. These positions are volunteers. We all have day jobs, right? Tara's she can have.
Now this is my day job.
Today I just wanted to share with you right now, we're kind of building this thing out because folks have been saying for years, we're Democrats, we're here, right? And so not only are we here and we're doing stuff now, but we're actually trying to get our act together. On the screen here, you can see our mission statement. A lot of work went into that, making sure that we kind of keyed in on what it is we do for the county. So as you see here, it reads, as the voice of St. Charles County, we represent Democratic interests by coordinating direct campaign efforts, mobilizing grassroots activities, and empowering voters to create lasting change, right? Because we don't just want to change for a minute and then the new regime comes in, we got to start all over, right? We want to build it to last. We want to make sure that we're here, dug in deep, and activities like this are the start of that. Can y'all still hear me in the back? Okay, good. Activities like this are the start of that. A lot of folks may not be as, nerdy towards politics as I may be, right? Because live, breathe, eat, sleep this stuff, okay? But in the county, there are options for you as well. If you just want to come and hang out with Democrats and do Democrat stuff and just Democrat, right? My goal this year is to turn Democrat to a verb, so work with me, all right? Democrat,
Yeah, like,
we have the central committee, like I said, we take care of the business of the party and the county, right? But here, this gentleman here in the front, stand up and say hi, Matt. That's why I want you to sit in the front, so you can. So, this is Matt Williams, okay? And he is the president of the St. Charles County Democratic Club, okay? And there you can go and be in a club.
Yeah.
Democrat.
Right, social environment, we're always looking for more people to come in. The idea is that if you. I'm off the campaign trail. I ran in 24, I'm running in 28, but right now I'm off the trail, so I'm not used to coming up and speaking again. But the club is going to be great. We're pulling it together. It was founded in the 50s. It's a social arm, and the best way to get a community to pull together is to have everybody get together and see that we're all humans. We all want the same things. We want our families to be able to have a future. We want to have economics that support us. We want everybody treated equally. So the best way I think to overcome some of the stereotypes that we're seeing is to have social events. So that's what we're looking to do, is build up and host social events, bring community, inform community, and then of course bring to bear any weapons that we have so that we can help candidates as well as they go forward to get elected. Make sure they get all the support they need, because we have to have a blue Missouri, and we have to have it soon. Because otherwise, I don't know about you guys, I don't think I can take red much longer. So come out every month. We're at El Agave on Monday, 6:30 p.m. But feel free to come out and join us and see what we have going on.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you, man. So again, as he said, the Democratic Club meets on the first Monday every month. This month you're on the second, right?
No.
Yeah,
June 2nd.
Yeah, June 2nd. It's coming up. This month's already gone. The Central Committee meets on the first Thursday every month. All right, and so this month will be on the 5th. Am I right? Say that, the 5th?
Yeah.
Thank you. Really quick, any members of the Central Committee who are in here, can I just get a past present? Just raise a hand real quick so folks can see who you are. That's you too. Oh, you are. All right, so two of us here tonight, and that's great. Last thing I want to say is that we're interested, and we have been actively collaborating with groups like the club and all the other constituency groups around the county, because we're all have to do this together. All right, we got to work together because we're all fighting the same bad guys, doing the same stuff. And hopefully, our legislators here, special guests, will be able to give you some insight on what it is that they've been doing and what the party is doing to combat some of this crazy stuff that you see on the news and in the TV about what's going on in the Missouri legislature. I'm going to stop there because I feel like I'm rambling, but I'll be around for questions later. I'm going to give it back to Terry.
So introductions, we're gonna do to Don and me, our honored guests over here. Then Alex, his song, he's the chair of Cottonville
Township.
Cottonville Township. What do you call this?
Event subcommittee.
There you go, event subcommittee. This is an event. He's gonna give you like a little session summary, and then we're gonna let Representative Mackey and Senator McCreary kind of tell us a little bit more, and then do a Q&A. Senator McCreary said she'd like to answer questions, and so just tell you guys, what's going on, and then how we can take action to, let's go. Yes, let's go. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Senator Tracy McCreary and Representative Ian Mackey. And then Alex will kind of go into some stuff, and then he will bring them up to kind of really get them going. I hadn't met Senator McCreary, or I think I met Ian maybe once or twice in this past year. But I've looked up a lot of stuff that they have done for us, and so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them. Tracy McCreary has been a champion for issues important to women, working families, and the middle class since she was first elected in a special session in 2011. She was a state representative for the 88th district until 2023, and now she's currently representing the 24th Senate district in St. Louis County. She is the blue wall that kind of separates the Democrats from the Republicans. Her area, everything west of you. Yeah, everything west of 22nd is Republican, which is us. And she's kind of keeping that wall together to speak for those of us who don't have anyone to speak for us. Sorry. She's won many awards. You should check her out. She's won all these awards, like even before, like she ran for stuff. And she's an advocate for immigrants, the LGBTQ community, farmers, healthcare workers, children. There was too many to probably mention. She's knocked doors to repeal the right to work. She's knocked doors to help protect reproductive freedom. We'll talk about that more on that. She's been a leader in passing legislation to protect consumers against rising utility bills. She's raised the age of marriage in Missouri. Thank you for that. And expanded healthcare to our newborns and our new mothers, among other things. This session, she was a leader on the Senate floor to try and stop all of the undoing of Missouri's voters. She's trying to protect the will of the people and stopping the rollback of abortion freedom and our earned sick leave. We are a better Missouri because Tracy is fighting for us. So hopefully after you hear from her, you'll be encouraged to help her fight to make Missouri a better place as well.
Tracy, can we, or is it okay? Is it here?
Yeah.
Can we do that? And next, okay.
You speak, but you gotta wait. Yes. But Representative Ian McAfee was first elected to the Missouri House of Representatives in 2018, representing the 87th district. That's Clayton, Ladue, U City, Brentwood, that area. And then we were redistricted, and he still got most of those people. He's still covering Ladue and Clayton. It's now the 99th. We've changed numbers all the time. Before his role in government, Ian worked as an early childhood educator. That's I could never do that. You probably couldn't teach middle school. I could never do early childhood. So we appreciate each other. And besides his legislative duties, he's still attorney, right? Working on roles. He knows law and he understands the role of what laws can do for social justice for those people that can't speak for themselves, can't speak up, don't have a voice. And so we're really lucky to have him there. He's a son of teachers. And of course, being a teacher himself, public education, quality education for all, is main priority. I loved, and I don't know if this happened, but I read it. I especially like, he has a proposal to change the Constitution to let state legislators be substitute teachers, which I didn't even know that was not a thing. So I was like, well, I'll sub on my days off when I win, but I didn't know they couldn't. So we're gonna make that happen. Yes, because as a teacher of 30 years, I would love for the state legislatures to get into an actual real school and see what it's like and what we need and how we need teachers. Principals to come in and try and teach for a day.
Yeah.
We'd love for our state legislatures to sub. Just so I read that, I'm like, oh, I love them even more. That'd be great. He supports women's right to choose. He has provided tax relief to Missouri residents. He's worked across the aisle, which that's a feat in itself. But he has helped pass legislation in the treatment of school children. So he's really big into making sure that all of our children get the education that they deserve. And especially looking at like discipline and how we can better, instead of getting, more, not to say we don't need SROs, I love my SRO, but more social workers and counselors. And, we need that everywhere in the state, especially in our schools. Yes, teachers, yes, we need counseling as well. He's protecting his idea, to protect the rights of all Missourians and delivering results. Is why he's in Jeff City. He wants to protect, like I said, the rights of all Missourians and deliver results. It's an honor. He says it's an honor to serve in the Missouri General Assembly, and I think it's an honor for us to have him here tonight to share what he knows and how we can stop the bleeding here in Jeff City. So Ian and Tracy will be here to talk to you a little bit later.
All right, so we brought up our legislators so that they can help us out and chime in during this next section. And then also there will be a Q&A and they'll have a chance to say whatever it is that's on their mind that they would like to, share with St. Charles County. So, oh, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this next session or section is our session summary. The whole point of sort of why we're here and what we as a Democratic Central Committee wanted to do for the community today was to share with St. Charles County residents what happened in Jeff City this year. So all of the laws that were passed, all of the laws that tried to be passed, how the relationships work. Because this is something that I've really attached to, is especially if you pay attention to national politics, that our institutions, our government is not self-reinforcing. That means it doesn't just work on its own. We really do not, it won't function without informed and involved citizens. So that's what we're trying to do here today, is share information and hopefully motivate people to get involved as well. Yeah, the Missouri state legislation, I mentioned the national stuff. If we are going to try to avoid any of that, I don't know, maybe we'll have some personal opinions or things that go on later. But for the most part, everything that we're going to talk about tonight is focused on what happened in the state of Missouri. So you may have noticed our guests are Democrats from St. Louis County, not St. Charles County. That is because we don't have any elected Dems in St. Charles County at the state level, and yet. And also, to my knowledge, none of them hold sessions like this. I know my rep and my state senator do not. If anyone has any information about their state rep or state senator in St. Charles County that has some sort of public meeting like this where they just share information and take questions, I'd love to hear about it. I will be there, and I promise I won't get arrested. I just want to hear what it's.
I gotta bail money.
Yeah. Telephone. Yes, and so I've heard I've seen a little bit of telephone town hall and or just a 10-minute podcast where they just spew things and then don't actually take any feedback from the citizens. So one of the reasons that we thought it was especially important this session, and we are building something. This is something we want to do regularly. Hopefully next year, we may have some different guests. Maybe you all will come back. And then the year after that, hopefully we'll have some elected Dems to come in here and actually do it for their own residents. But what we hope you get out of today is information about how your government's working, because it is your government. It should be working for you. We want you to get some tools to better understand your government. So not everybody knows how bills go through the whole process. Even if you watch the old Schoolhouse Rock and I'm just a bill, it's very similar in the state of Missouri, but not everybody remembers. And so also there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. I'm gonna ask about a weird thing called a PQ later, and we're gonna figure out what that is. And yes, I already mentioned we wanted to give a good example of what representation looks like. So what it looks like to actually have legislators that will sit down and address people face to face. All right, great. All right, so what is a session? This is the basic civics 101. I'm just a bill type stuff. The legislative session in Jefferson City it actually doesn't go all year. If you aren't into Missouri politics, you may have thought it went all year. It actually, the first day of session is in January and the last day is in May. There are a couple pieces around that. That doesn't mean that our legislators aren't working year round to improve the state. They are working on bills, drafting things, collaborating, meeting with the residents, all of that kind of stuff. So the way the session starts is they can start pre-filing bills. And that means any idea that a state rep or a senator has, they or their staff can get together, draft a bill and submit it at the beginning of the session and say, I think this would be a good law. Or here's a law that's on the books that I want gone. Or here's a law that isn't working right. Here are the changes I think should be made to this law. There are some other things outside of that that we'll also talk about that aren't just laws or statutes, but they can also propose changes directly to the Missouri Constitution. That is going on right now, and we'll have one that we think about a little later related to reproductive rights. As all that happens, then the Senate the Senate is a little bit more formal, a little bit more, or they have a few more guardrails around. So they require bills to be filed by the end of January. I don't know if there are exceptions to that or not. Are there exceptions to that, Tracy, or is pretty much everything? Oh. And then similarly, the House puts things over, and yeah, we don't need to get that's enough. I think the most important thing that's going to come up later on is there are two things that can happen after the session is over. So the session ended with the last official day of the session ended May 16th, but Senator McCreary and some of the others are going to be headed back to Jeff City tomorrow, and then everybody will be back on June 2nd for a special session, which is called by the governor to go deal with very specific things. And then, based off of if the governor doesn't like certain or any laws that were passed and ends up vetoing them, there is a veto session that can come around in September. So that was just a refresher of sort of Civics 101 and how stuff happens. All right. So how most of these bills work in the House and Senate. So bills can originate in either house. So it can come from the Senate or the House. When we talk about these numbers and when we go through the individual things, you're going to hear a lot of like SB 22, HB 567. That stands for Senate Bill 22, House Bill 567. So once you start looking stuff up online for yourself and you're like, hey, this doesn't make sense, or I want to know what's actually in the bill. I want to read the text. I don't want to just hear what the news tells me. I don't want to hear what my neighbor told me. I want to see for myself and see how I interpret the law. That's going to be the easiest way to look things up. Once those bills are submitted, they get referred to committees within the Senate and within the House. They each have like little spheres of expertise. So our senators and our state reps will sit on these committees, and it'll be geared towards educate. Give me what's a committee that you sit on?
Education. Sure.
Agriculture. Yes. So there are these separate committees that review bills as small groups before it gets to the bigger House or Senate to be considered, and putting them out to be considered by all of the rest of their peers. That is being put on the perfection calendar. The only reason I'm mentioning these very specific things is, like I said, I want you to have the tools when you're finished here to go look something up on mo.house.gov and be able to actually understand what you're looking at. Because if you don't know these things, it really, like, we'll see a picture of it later. Some of these things are just gibberish if you're not still looking at them. Once something gets perfected, it goes through, gets discussed. There will be a final passage by whatever the originating house is. It gets passed over to the other house. They talk, they conference if needed to figure out, okay, I didn't really like this part. Let's change it in this way. And then eventually, assuming both the Senate and the House vote on it, then it goes for signing or vetoing and eventually publishing in the register. All right. That was not the end of Civics 101. We're almost there.
And that's a great source.
Yes. So the next part of Civics 101 is not the basics of how the government works, but where do we get our information from? Regular, like traditional media is, I agree. There is a lot of it that is sort of dying and falling by the wayside. So what are some sources that you can trust, or what are sources that I go to in order to learn about them? My absolute favorite publication in the state of Missouri for anything that has to do with legislation or politics is the Missouri Independent. It is free. There's no subscription needed. You can go out there right now. Almost every single bill that we reviewed today has some article written with in-depth reporting from a Missouri Independent reporter about it. All right, next source that we like from our friends over in St. Louis is St. Louis Post Dispatch. They have a pretty great politics section that is subscription based. But you know what? I donate my money to Missouri Independent and I subscribe to the St. Louis Post Dispatch. We need reporters in Jeff City telling us what is going on. We cannot be informed and we cannot have things like this to share information with people without having people in Jeff City, in the court or in the state house, talking with our representatives, talking with our senators and figuring out, what this all actually means and how it fits together. Sure. All right, some other news orgs that I really like. I'm not trying to be like just a propagandist, but the ones that I find pretty good and trustworthy. Kansas City Star does some great reporting. KSDK Politics. KMOV does a little bit of politics, and the Kansas Reflector. It is Kansas based, but there's a lot of overlap. So I would recommend on how you stay informed. Go out. A lot of your politicians now are on social media. There's a lot of downsides to social media. There are some upsides too. There are benefits to following these people and understanding and getting their opinion. I was going to say one exception to that, but I'll just another is the Missouri government itself puts out information to try to help you understand these things. Those resources are kind of hard to find, but they're out there. If you go to missouri.house.gov, or actually this is a Senate resource, Missouri mo.senate. There's a glossary of legislative terms. If you have any questions about anything that we talk about, you can look it up in there. And then I was just kind of curious, what sort of news sources or where do you get your news from?
Well, I will say house.mo.gov, the House website, and the Senate companion website, that is what we use to track legislation. We don't have any sort of internal system where we're tracking where bills are, or what the status is, or where they are in hearings, or what the vote was. Well, we want to know what a roll call was in committee and how people voted, or we want to know where it's moving or how long it's been somewhere. We use the same site that's available to every single one of you to figure that out. So it takes a little while, like he was saying, to navigate it and find all the pieces and make sure you're reading the right summary or the right version of the bill. But it's a great tool and a resource, and it's way better than almost any other state in terms of its transparency, in terms of what's going on in a real-time basis. So definitely recommend that. And then news-wise, I would just throw out St. Louis Public Radio. They also do a great job. Jason Rosenbaum, Sarah Calvin, they do a terrific job covering her. They're just another one I throw out.
They do. I'm hoping STL
Magazine.
Yeah, they're great too.
They picked up some great reporters over the last year.
And also within the House and the Senate, we have professional nonpartisan communications teams, and they videotape and post all of our press conferences, and they will do snippets from hearings and things like that too. And all that's free and it's available on YouTube. So like the Senate one is MoSenCom. So, and you can subscribe to it and just see videos of things that happen every day.
Cool. I didn't know that one. I'm going to start that.
When you're the MoDOT for Senate for House, you can also see what's going on the floor.
Yes, right.
And when they're in session, you can actually watch the session.
Yes. So you can on the House website. There are links to both committee chambers and the floor. So you can watch video from those when people are going in and giving testimony on different bills if you're interested in them. It does take a little bit of sleuthing you have to watch the calendar. You have to understand when the bill's going to be there, but you can do that. And then the Senate has audio.
Audio only in the Senate.
Yep.
Rural caption.
Why?
Just history. We also aren't allowed to have computers on the floor.
Really?
Computers with keyboards. You can have like a pad, but it's just a little more formal. Sounds more formal.
I kind of like that though, because I have been in the gallery quite a few times. The House and they're sitting there playing the games on.
Brenda, do you have a question or a comment?
It's a reminder, Subscriptions, many of the items that we talked about today are available at your local public library.
Yep.
So if you don't have a subscription, you can come to the public library and find many pieces of interesting information to help you out, and also really good resources to help you find it from our local library. So I want to just remind everybody that since we're sitting here in the library, it's a wonderful resource.
Love that. That's why we're here.
Actually, I just got a notice today from the St. Charles County Library that with your library card, you can access all of the local newspapers from their site.
That's wonderful.
Without any charge. So, as long as you have a St. Charles County Library card.
And library cards are free for residents.
Yes, they are. And we have a cross-reference with the St. Louis County Library also. Like I can borrow books and stuff from the St. Louis County Library online. I think they're
Cool. All right, thanks, sir. Yeah. All right. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of we're hearing the session review, and that is specific bills that happen. So one of the things that I mentioned in the overview of why we're here, but I didn't hit it very hard, is we felt it especially important this session to have some sort of public facing piece that focused on policy, because there's been a lot of policy that the voters of Missouri have put in place that the legislators of Jefferson City have been overturning and undermining. One of those is one that we all voted on last year, Proposition A. A lot of work went into it from groups across the state. The whole focus of Prop A, we ended up getting 210,000 signatures. It passed with 58% of Missouri voters. I think the percentage in that in St. Charles was higher. So it had a strong majority support. And what Prop A did, it did several things, but sort of high level is it increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour in 2026. And it did that by sort of increments. So I think $1.25 every year to get up to there. And then key to that is it continued to increase the minimum wage, locked in with inflation or CPI every year afterwards. Another key provision of that for working families is guaranteeing earned paid sick leave, 1 hour per 30 hours worked. That is not a lot. This is not just free sick days as many times as you want. This is earned sick leave that you as a worker should have access to. HB 567 killed the inflation increase and the sick leave portion of Prop A. Also, by the way, please, if I say anything wrong about any of the bills, just chime in and say, you're not quite right about that, or no, that is a lie. Shut up. Yeah, so we really, I think I speak on behalf of the Central Committee here, that people should not have to choose between going to work sick or abandoning a sick family member and losing their job.
Right. I think you do speak for all.
Yeah. So yeah.
I just want to say one thing about this, and you'll notice when we get to the Amendment 3, this was a proposition, which means it went into state law, which is why once the governor signs House Bill 567, it's gone. It's because it was in state law, not the Constitution. So that's a big difference when we're talking tonight.
Yep.
And we should not have to put everything into the Constitution to get it passed.
No.
That is, our Constitution hasn't been rewritten since 1940, except for the ones that we have to pass. But we learned on the puppy mills.
Gets longer every year. Sir.
And just a quick question about the inflation adjustments for minimum wage. I had thought about a decade or so ago, we voted a constitutional amendment to raise the minimum wage to $12 an hour with an inflation adjustment. And part of that, there was no inflation adjustment part of that. It never came to fruition. They never voted on.
We voted to increase the minimum wage, but it must not have had a perpetual increase because it topped it.
That was a major part of putting this bill here together when they started it. Can y'all hear me in there? Because by 2026, $15 won't be. You need more than that for minimum wage. there are economists who say the minimum wage nationwide should be around $21 a month, right?
Flip to the next slide, sir.
Yeah, so that's why that cost of living increase is in there, because it adjusts every year annually as part of that deal. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, no, Don hit on a great point for this. And this is, there's a group of economists and researchers at MIT that go across the country and look for, okay, based off of your the cost of living in your area, what is what we consider a living wage for Missouri? Living wage, according to MIT researchers, $20.87 an hour. That is with 0 children and 1 working adult. That is not to support a family. That is just not to go into debt and to stay afloat as a single, not parent, just single adult. Minimum wage in Missouri, $13.75.
Can I add something really quick here? So a lot of times you hear, I'm a labor guy, so when you talk about wages, my brain just starts going crazy. So if I start rambling, stop me. But I know we're talking about a poverty wage and a minimum wage, right? So right now, $13.75 is the minimum wage in the state of Missouri until they're able to rip that out. So I hope they don't. But previous to that, we were around 7 something statewide. And you see, that's under what they consider a poverty wage here, right?
Is it the federal minimum wage still?
Yeah.
$7.52.
Yes, it is. And so when guys who work in manufacturing like me, we always talk about a living wage, right? Because we want people to be able to live, right? You shouldn't have to suffer because you want to have a family or buy a house. You should be able to do that and not hurt, eat. And then when you talk to trades guys, they start talking about a prevailing wage, right? And that's a pay scale for those guys who do that special labor in those jobs that nobody really wants to do, like hang off scaffolds and build buildings and skyscrapers and things like that, put in your pipes and all of those things. Those guys are really adamant about prevailing wages being in the contract and making sure that everybody on that job site is making what they should make every time. Go ahead, Laura.
I saw a chart yesterday that referred to productivity in relation to wages, and it said if productivity was translated into wages at the same rate it used to be, the average wage in the United States would be 31.
Absolutely. So that's labor. Hope 101. Any more questions? Come see me out. Right back to you.
I mean, we could spend hours talking about it. But just next stuff, because I'm still going to talk more about it. And this is just reiterating. I think when people hear living wage, they assume that this is, oh, I'm saving for retirement, I'm able to support a kid. It is not. The definition that they use for this living wage does not budget for eating out at a restaurant or meals that aren't prepared at home. Doesn't budget for leisure time, holidays, unpaid vacations, savings, retirement, or other long-term financial investment. This is literally just to stay afloat and not to go into debt.
All right. Good. I love it. Really quick, with that chart here, if you look at how the scale escalates across there, that's judged by family size, right? And so what they're doing when they keep our wages, look, they're actually punishing you for building your family, right?
Yeah.
Raising your children, getting married, things of that nature. However, we'll say that.
Those charts.
MIT. I have links to stuff I can send out later, but yeah, both of those are from. I don't know what institute that. But yeah, it's. Yeah. This will all be put on the website.
We can figure something out for that.
Yeah, I think it would be great information. Yeah.
Yeah, we are live streaming right now. We'll try to get that recording. And if you submit it, we can probably send that recording out to you. Well, you might not be able to see. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So yes, just to reiterate, I'll try to be quick since we spent a lot of time on this. Unless a person's getting something significant of intangible value that they can take away from the job, meaning skills, knowledge, training, certification, flexibility. If they are working for less than a living wage, they are subsidizing their employer with their labor. That means you are going into debt so that your employer can profit more. This is, a single adult minimum wage laborer is going into debt today to work that job for the benefit of the employer. This is not a slam on employers at all across the board. I love innovation. I love small businesses. I love anyone who takes that risk to get into it. I'm highly considering that myself. What this is when people try to define minimum wage as like, oh, this is just a start. It's not like something that people should be working on all their life. That's fine. Then put your money where your mouth is and do not hire an adult at that wage. Because if you're hiring an adult at that wage, you are asking them to go into debt for your benefit. All right. So next up, capital, along the same lines, we kind of grouped some of these together, which is the capital gains tax exemption. There was a bill passed that exempts capital gains from income tax, and some more details on this. And so, yeah, this is not only a tax cut for very wealthy and corporations based off of just appreciation of capital. This is also going to cost us the taxpayers money. So the fiscal note for the bill estimates that we are going to reduce state revenue the first year by $430 million for this, and in future years reduced by about 340 every year. This is for both individuals and corporations, and the estimate does not account. Well, this is according to the sponsor of the bill. Their quibble is the estimate does not account for increased economic activity from new investments made by people who retain the money. What does that sound like? Have we heard that before? They sound like standard trickle-down economics that we know. This is not just my opinion. Go out and consult any economist that has really studied the concept of trickle-down economics. It doesn't work. There were some good things in this bill. I'm not just going to talk about it. There was a concept called a circuit breaker trying to protect the limited income of our residents that are over 65. So we did increase the tax credits and tied future increases for that tax credit to inflation. Weird that they would tie the tax credits to those over 65 to inflation, but not minimum wage. I don't understand the logic there. And elimination, there was also an elimination of state tax on feminine hygiene products and diapers. So there was some good stuff there.
You mean state sales tax?
Yes, what did I say? State, yes, state sales tax, yep. All right. I preached too much. Let's skip this one.
Picture of it.
What? Okay. The man wants to get a picture of it. This whole thing is, what's the easiest way to make money? To have money, that's right. Yes. So we know just from experience from living life, power and wealth tend to concentrate. They don't naturally disperse. We aren't looking for the government to step in and redistribute everything equally. We just recognize that the way the system works, things tend to concentrate. So we need a little bit of pressure. All right. Next up. All right, elementary and secondary education, SB 68. We had lawmakers negotiating Missouri budget at $300 million to public school spending. That sounds pretty good. So this is one that I am not very well versed in, and I know we have an expert in education here. So I put a few bullet points that I pulled away from it, but Representative, do you have anything you'd like to sort of say about the education bill?
Sure. Yeah, no, there was a lot in there for sure. Let's see, there was one piece that I really liked was the grade level equivalency standardization through the department. So right now, kids who take the MAP test are given advanced, proficient, near proficient, and it's 4 or 5 categories. Doesn't really take a whole lot. So after this is signed into law, the department is actually going to assess where on grade level a child is on that test, and inform both the school and the parents. If your child's in 3rd grade and they took this test, or 4th grade, they took this test, are they performing on a 4th grade level? Are they down on a 1st grade level, or up on an 8th grade level? Where are they in terms of math, in terms of reading, in terms of the different subjects? So that'll help, I think, parents and schools get a much better idea, and it'll be much fairer to schools in terms of how the funding flows as well, in terms of how the students are actually performing. That was kind of the bulk of the bill. We added a whole lot more onto that. There's there's no money in the bill, but there's language and then budget money to continue getting lead out of school drinking water. There's requirement that schools designate personnel to be trained and stop the bleed for the unfortunate violent incidents that happen in schools. There's my language to prohibit schools from using zero tolerance discipline policy, which is something I worked on for the last several years. So once this is signed, schools will have to actually investigate incidents and, discipline appropriately rather than just having a blanket zero tolerance policy. What else was in there? There was so much that was in there.
I think in terms of like as a constituent and as a resident, these are the big questions that I have. They talked about raising the starting teacher wage last year. We want to know now that the budget passed, did teachers actually get a raise?
Yes,
They did.
yes, they did. They're $40,000.
Yes.
Yes, that's the minimum.
And is that just for 1 year or is that going to be continuous?
It's subject to appropriations for sure.
Year by year.
Yeah, year by year. Yeah.
So in other words, they could get 40,000 next year and the next year back down to 20.
Right.
Because we took away. Yeah, okay.
Right. Well, so it's a two-pronged. So you have to pass the language that says here's what it's going to be, which we did. So we passed the language a year before we ever put the money there.
Right.
And then you've got to come back and keep putting the money there. So it'll still say in law, teachers should get $40,000. That's in law, and that won't change unless somebody repeals that law. But they can play funny math games and do the budget however they want to. So they can decide to fund it. Yeah, it's in statute at 40,000, and so the idea is that they'll keep funding.
And hopefully in 2070, it won't sleep at 40.
Yeah, it went from 25 to 40. As the state minimum, obviously that's not the average. A lot of teachers get paid more than
And that
that.
doesn't really apply in St. Louis County or this county. Even the teachers are way more respected and paid appropriately, but if some.
We did have some teachers getting paid that, and part of the reason for that is, now you're gonna get me on my soapbox. But part of the reason for that is we have way too many school districts, guys. We got 518 districts. We got K-8 districts educating 100 kids. Those teachers were getting paid 25, now they're getting paid 40. Okay, if they're right next to another district, K-8 educating another 100 kids. Rural Missouri is big, it's wide. I grew up out there. It takes a while to get around. We can keep buildings, we can, keep communities together, but we've got to dissolve the invisible lines, consolidate administrations, consolidate school personnel. We have an insane amount of school districts, and that's a huge reason why teachers get paid what they do in outstate Missouri. We've got to. I have ideas for how we can do that. We can talk about that later, but we've got to consolidate the districts.
Okay, but I like the question that you've got up there, and it's about the tax money going to private religious schools.
Yes.
Okay, not only that, what about the charter?
Right.
Okay, those two things really get in my crawl because we should not be supporting.
Yeah. So the voucher money was not in the education bill, Senate Bill 68. That was separate. And that was the governor's top priority. And I was shocked to see this was the quickest and most robust about face I had seen from Republican colleagues in lockstep. So I've been in there 7 years, and going back to 2020 or 2021, it's been several years since we initially created the voucher program, the education scholarship accounts. And it was set up as a tax credit program. It passed by one vote. The majority minority was still the same. There were still 111 of them and 50 of us. It passed by one vote. And the Speaker of the House came down on the floor, Rob Piscopo at the time, and cried at a microphone. Were you still in there for that? Yeah, right? Bawled his eyes out. It's the greatest thing ever. One vote. Every other vote we've had on that on the floor has been so close, so contentious. These are a lot of rural guys who's either are on school boards or their families on school boards, or they were teacher, they've got a public education background. So our ranking budget member, Betsy Vogel, who is our Democrat go-to on the budget, she stood up and asked for a roll call vote on this. And with 2 or 3 exceptions, it was a massive blowout. They all voted for it. I could not believe it. I don't know what changed. I have no idea how that happened. And there's so few things that surprise you after 7 years, but I was shocked to see.
You're all going to open charter schools.
All of them in lockstep. This wasn't the vouchers. This wasn't for the charters. This was for the $50 million to rent.
So then they're all going to open schools in this little, in Iron County.
I mean, that was why they were opposed to it from the beginning. That's why they used to be opposed to it, because they would say there's not going to be, it's not going to help us, right? That's not going to happen. But yeah. So I do hope it gets challenged. I haven't read anything about the pending lawsuit. I hope that it gets challenged. I think our state constitution is pretty clear that public money going to private entities is prohibited. There's a handful of exceptions in there. I don't think this meets that. I don't know if the ACLU will challenge it, or somebody else will challenge it, or a parent will challenge it, but I hope it gets challenged.
Mark Elias.
I have a quick question about how something works.
Yeah.
So it's my understanding with these vouchers, it's the state money that follows the student rate, correct? Okay. Now, so we live in Lincoln County and the largest school district there is Troy's.
Right. Yeah.
So let's say you're in Winfield, you're familiar with the area,
Yeah.
right? And you want your child to go to Troy.
Mhm.
Obviously, the state money follows. Would the federal money follow as well?
So that's,
That works.
so that's not the vouchers, that's open enrollment.
That's open
Yeah.
enrollment, not the
Yes,
vouchers.
right.
But that's what
Yeah.
that's what they're pushing for. And I
Sure.
don't know if did that make it through? Is that now?
no.
Oh, awesome.
But I do hope it does, and that's to my point about consolidation, and Lincoln County is the perfect example for why that should be done, I think.
Okay, but the way it was explained to us was that if that happens,
Mhm.
so let's say you have an influx into the Troy Buchanan School District, right?
Yeah.
Okay, however, the Troy Buchanan School District can't tax people outside of its district.
Right.
So it would be the residents in Troy that would have to make up the money.
So Troy isn't required to take any new students. So there are competing proposals. There's a voluntary way to do it and a mandatory way to do it. Our proposal has always been voluntary. So districts would choose whether or not to receive students, even under a mandatory framework, which several states in the Northeast have mandatory programs. Schools still only have to take students for the amount of seats that they have. They're not forced to build new buildings and hire new teachers and do all of that to take students.
Right.
They're only, whether it's a voluntary system or even in a mandatory setting, you're only going to take students for the seats that you have. And right now, I know Lincoln County's been on a population boom for a long time and maybe still is, but our school districts in St. Louis County, and I don't know about St. Charles County, they're obviously, you guys are booming too. St. Louis guys, we're draining population. People aren't having kids and people are leaving. Almost every single school district in St. Louis County is so far down in enrollment right now. All of them, the good ones, the ones you think about as being the best schools. Clayton is down. They're all down. There's not enough kids. And so there's empty seats just sitting there. And so, people say, well, why in the world would a school just take the $7,000 when they're spending $15,000 or $18,000 or $19,000 per student? Because they have an empty seat. They'll take the $7,000. They'll take 10 kids. That's $70,000 they're not already making. Okay, great. They'll do it. And that's how it's worked in other states. Massachusetts has had this since 1992. It's been voluntary, and the vast majority of districts have chosen to participate over the last 30 years.
And Massachusetts has among the best education systems.
They kick our butt.
Yeah.
Massachusetts, New Jersey, Florida, if you want to look at a red state who also does the same thing, both sides. Connecticut, Vermont, mandatory system, all these states. You're getting me on my soapbox. It really frustrates me how partisan this issue is here. Laura Kelly signed this into law in Kansas a couple of years ago. Senator from Republican legislature championed it, signed it. This is the future. We are such a parochial state, 114 counties, 518 districts, small, local.
163 representatives.
163 representatives, way too many. We've got to be forward thinking. And I really hope that we can get some more Democrats who will at least think about this issue some more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Thank you for my soapbox now.
That was great because that was the last question. What trends do we see in the future? All right. Next up is our public safety, otherwise known in the news as the police bill. And this is the bill that established the Board of Police Commissioners as of August 28th, 2025. That is the citizen commissioners are going to run the City of St. Louis Police Department with the mayor on the board.
Didn't they do this once before?
Things have changed around. So this bill was supported. It did have, at least in the public sphere, had a pretty partisan divide, but not so much in legislators. Although there was still some partisan back and forth. This is a bill that was supported by the rank and file St. Louis police, my understanding. And what it does, I think it was huge. There was a lot of stuff in there. But one of the main things that we were interested in was it does increase incrementally the future police budget for St. Louis. I just wanted to note that, I dove into this to see, are we way overspending, that kind of stuff. No, it puts us on par with puts St. Louis on par with similar cities like Cincinnati. Democrats won a lot of additions to this bill. There were a lot of good things and got rid of a lot of bad things. There was a piece that they kind of tried to redefine the term rioting and the crime that in a way that really could encompass a lot of protests.
That
So-
was not in the bill.
No, we took it out, we took it out in the Senate. It would have even made like standing on a picket line possibly.
Yes.
It was a very, weird definition of riot.
So yeah, because there was a lot of like weird partisan stuff in the public, I believe both of you voted for this bill. So I wanted to give you, since you also represent parts of St. Louis, a chance to talk about.
Sure. I would not have voted yes on the House version of the bill as it came over to us. But luckily in the Senate, we were able to make a lot of changes to the bill. So ultimately, I was able to support the bill once the Senate got done modifying it. A lot of it has to do with, this was one of the governor's top priorities. And so you just have to understand what it's like to be us when the governor, like if the governor has like his top 3 priorities, that these bills are going to pass no matter what. So there was no way for the 10 Senate Democrats to stop this bill. There's 10 Democrats in the Senate and 24 Republicans. So we knew we weren't going to be able to stop the bill, partially because it came through so early in session as well. So our strategy was to make a bill that we thought was a pretty bad bill, less bad. And it got to the point where I was actually able to vote yes on it. So it had a lot of Democratic additions to it. There's additional training for racial profiling, for implicit bias. They get more training on de-escalation techniques. There's a task force for missing and murdered African-American women and girls. This was a big win. I don't think we could have gotten without this bill. Increase in restitution for those who were found to be wrongfully convicted, and that includes housing and other wraparound services. People like us have been working on that forever, and I don't think we would have been able to get it except for the negotiations on this bill. Even though some market this bill as state control of the St. Louis City Police, the St. Louis-based state senators get to, they have to support the person in order to get through the nomination process through boards. And
they have to be city residents,
they
right?
have to be city residents or own a piece of property in the city. And it's up to advice and consent of the Senate. So it has to go through gubernatorial appointments. So basically, if the governor wants someone to be on that board and the state senator that represents that area doesn't want them, that person will not be able to get on the board, because only the senator who represents that person can sponsor them through the gubernatorial appointments process. So to me, that's about as close to local control as you can get.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And they don't, there's state control of the Kansas City police, and they don't have that. So I feel like at least this allows for local control, and the mayor's on the board as well. So I feel like there is going to be a lot of local representation.
And it also punched Andrew Bailey right in the gut and told him you can't sue prisoners for their innocence. It just credit the needs, which was a huge piece of it as well. And it was, like you said, it was supported by the St. Louis Police Union, but it's also supported by the Ethical Society of Police, which is the Black Police Union. And those two being on the same page is so they were both very lockstep. They didn't want to be up to the political whims of whoever was in the mayor's office. They wanted a more structured oversight, and they're down several hundred cops. It's so hard to recruit. That plus all the other good things, it just
I
made
think
sense.
it's hard to recruit cops anyway.
It is in general.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I wanted to highlight this, and I wanted to give them a chance because I love when I change my mind on something and I learn more about it. And also we have great senators and reps fighting for changes that make something good. But yeah, my gut reaction was, oh, this is taking away local control. I thought we were like small local government here. And then like the more I learned about it, the more I reached out to people. And yeah, I got to change my mind. I love it. All right. This one is a huge one for future impact. It doesn't seem ostensibly that bad at first. Senate Bill 22, the initiative petition reform. Go to the next one. Here's all it does. It just says groups can appeal ballot language from the Secretary of State. And when they appeal, the court makes recommendations in the language if it's unfair, and then the Secretary of State makes changes within 7 days. If the courts say it's still unfair, then Secretary of State makes more changes in 5 days. If it's still unfair, the Secretary of State makes changes within 3 days. The catch is, at least my understanding of this is, if the process runs out or if they game the system in the ways that we know that they will, the Secretary of State will have the final word on the way the ballot language ends up on the ballot. So that means, we can go to the next one. In 2023, our Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, proposed the following ballot language for Amendment 3. We all know what Amendment 3 was. It overturned the abortion ban and is currently in the Constitution. This was the language that was supposed to appear. Do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to allow for dangerous, unregulated, and unrestricted abortions from conception to live birth? That was a gross misrepresentation of what the constitutional amendment did. And judges said, no, you cannot do that. This is the equivalent of lying and misleading the voters. And so they rejected it and required it to be rewritten. Under these new rules, it is possible and or likely that that's the language we could have seen on the ballot. Yeah.
And the ACLU has already filed suit on this, so stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay, next up. Very much related to the impact of Senate Bill 22 and the ability to control ballot language for constitutional amendments. We have HJR. Wait, that's not HB. What does that mean? That's right, House Joint Resolution. So rather than just becoming statute and going into the law, this is when the House has put forward a proposed constitutional amendment. So this is not law. This will be up on the ballot for us to vote on next year. And essentially they're overturning Amendment 3. It's got to go to the Missouri voters before it becomes law. And it pretty much just reinstates the abortion ban in Missouri. It says that it allows some exceptions for medical emergencies, fatal fetal anomalies, and for survivors to break their incest, but only in the first 12 weeks.
And only if the rape or incest has been reported to the police.
They did take that part out.
They-
The
they-
reporting
they-
department's out,
They
yes.
just the police reporting.
Yeah, but it's still only up to 12 weeks.
Well, most of them don't even know they're pregnant.
Yeah, so we've seen the proposed ballot language. I don't remember if it disappeared here or if it's on the next slide. Oh, here's I believe what the proposed ballot language is. I don't know what process this will end up following to get on.
It'll go through the courts.
And didn't they just put amendment, our original amendment, they just said I can't be in effect until after this has been voted for?
That's just temporary.
Not until, it doesn't have to, it's not on hold until the election, but it is currently on hold right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it just got done within the last couple
Yeah,
of days.
Yeah, so one thing that I wanted to point out to you also, if you have conversations with your neighbors, when this comes up on the ballot next year, if it appears with this language, I want you to notice something. Nowhere does the language mention that the amendment would ban elective abortions. Nowhere. It talks about all of these things that sound okay. It has no real statement about what the impact of the amendment will be.
And I'd like to know what does protect children from gender transition have to do with abortion?
I think you're gonna see a lot of television advertisements for trans kids, not about.
I know that.
Yeah.
It's the ballot that they say to try to trick voters into voting yes.
Buzzwords.
So that's a two topic amendment. I don't think they could do that.
It's related. I don't think it's gonna get thrown in on it. It's related enough.
It is?
They made that case with the language in Amendment 3, guys, was really vague when it talked about reproductive health care. You're talking about what's that?
And who read that?
Well, we did. Well, I mean, our side did, right? And it was incredibly vague. It mentioned reproductive health care, and to not define that,
Yeah.
I think you can make a strong case. Look, I don't want to make it. I'm somebody who's fought for these trans kids for years. I think you can make a case that reproductive health care involves gender hormone therapy. I think that's not a stretch. If we're being real, it's not a stretch.
Yes.
So they should have defined that when they wrote Amendment 3. They should have freaking defined it.
Yeah.
Are privacy issues for the individual anywhere in this amendment?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
What do you mean by privacy issues?
Talking about HIPAA.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, well, they can't tell. They can't tell that you're in here, regardless of what the procedure is.
Right, I mean, we are required, abortion clinics are required to report how many abortions they perform. But they're not reporting, we had our Randall Williams theory where we had, tracking of periods and things like that, but there's no patient information that I'm aware of that is given over to the state in terms of specific patients.
All right, next up.
But I think you could use some deductive reasoning and, people stand outside clinics, they try to find out who it is, for sure.
All right, so that ends the highlight of the big bills. Some other things that I personally found interesting child marriage under certain conditions was still legal in Missouri until this session. So we have actually, not everything we're talking about is bad. This is good. Child marriage is banned in Missouri. There was a bill passed, and I like to be bipartisan when I can. I've been following one of our Republican state reps, Phil Sassman, who is every year for the last few years has put out a bill trying to ban the sale of certain invasive species at nurseries. If you're involved in any kind of agriculture, farming, recreation, like hunting, conservation and preservation of land, the scourge of invasive species and how it is displacing all of our Missouri natives, Missouri population. So, this is very small, honestly. Bills, the stuff that's banned already isn't being sold. So it's not, except for maybe Bradford pears. Now we can finally stop getting those, but they're already everywhere. So banning them now doesn't really matter. But the reason why I want to celebrate this and the reason why I'm on board with this Sierra Club on this is this gives us a foothold. It passed in a bipartisan fashion, and it gives us a foothold to say when new threats come up and when we identify new species that show up in the Missouri parks and wild spaces, we can actually take some action to try to prevent them. The other really cool thing that is specifically here for St. Louis and St. Charles County are really impactful is we passed a bill, another bipartisan bill, to be able to fund radioactive contamination and waste testing within St. Charles. So we can give hours of background on this. There's a lot of really good groups in the area, but out in St. Charles County, outside of Weldon Spring, near where the Weldon site is, Francis House High, is right next to a facility that used to refine and work with radioactive material and TNT. There's a lot of stuff, up until the late 80s, they were pulling trout out of August Bush lakes that had high levels of radioactivity that you just shouldn't eat. Since then, it's been, but we can finally do some state-funded testing and build the evidence and the case to expand RECA and get people compensated here in St. Charles County, here in St. Louis County, because we can gather the evidence now ourselves. That's one of the big barriers as far as RECA expansion. And last one, it was a cell phone ban policy requirement by schools. This is every school district now, I believe, will have to create a policy that also includes the ban of the use of cell phones during all hours, not just instructional hours, right? So it includes lunch and stuff.
I don't think so.
No, they just have to have a policy dealing with cell phone usage, and I think it would just bans during instructional time, but each school can decide. There's flexibility for each district to decide what that looks like.
They some reason I thought that's added.
My only concern with the cell phone ban is with school violence, school shootings. And a kid doesn't have a cell phone to call his parents to say, I'm locked in my classroom, I'm okay.
What number to call?
Huh?
Kids these days won't know what number to call.
We'll see how strictly it's enforced.
Well, I can see taking taking a teacher, collecting it at the door or having a special locker for the kids to put them in while they're in class.
Yeah.
But within the classroom,
Mhm.
where they can get to it.
Yeah.
You know, should a disaster thing arise.
My freshman has in one of his classes, he takes the phone, put the baggie.
Yeah.
And that's it for the rest is a free for all.
Yeah.
So this is one of the great things is at least this requires the districts to set a policy so that if it is enforced, then at least both kids and teachers have consistent rules that they know that they're supposed to follow. That's one of the most difficult things right now is my first period teacher doesn't care and lets me do whatever. And then my third period teacher, you know, is really restricted. Yeah. And it's,
where their calculators at.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
The Chromebooks are already infuriating.
all right.
Nurses should be advised that they should be aware of withdrawal symptoms. So.
All right, so that covers all the legislation. I wanted to get some comments from our guests that we have here on some like big moments in the section. There was one that came up recently as a PQ in the Senate. Senator McCreary, could you let us know what that is?
So just a little bit of history. I'm in year 3 in the Senate. I have a 4-year term. This is the first year I've ever been able to actually be a state senator. The last 2 years were pretty much everything was shut down because of Republican fighting within their party. So we had, you know, Bill Eigel. Bill Eigel and Denny Hoskins kind of charged with the conservative caucus that eventually became the Freedom Caucus, and they just fought with each other for 2 sessions, and so not much happened. So this year was the first year that the Senate was functioning since I've been there, and we started off the year really well. Leading up to the last week of session, I would have said the legislate that we would have received a score of like B-, quite honestly. So, you know, the governor was able to accomplish some of his goals, but the Democrats had a way to make bad bills less bad. And of course, the Democrats were able to stop some bad things from happening too. But then the wheels fell off the bus the last week of session, and it all connects back to Amendment 3, which was the amendment that ended Missouri's abortion ban, and then Proposition A, which allowed for some earned sick time. The Republican politicians were hell-bent on just disregarding the voters on both of those issues. In my district in St. Louis County, my district goes up and down I-270. Both Proposition A and Amendment 3 passed with 65% of the vote. So it passed overwhelmingly, and that also means that, and out here too, that means that Republican and Democrat voters alike support these common sense things. So we need to remember this as we head into future elections, that the people working against the will of the voters are not our Republican neighbors and friends. It's Republican politicians that are ignoring the will of the voters. So leading up into that last week of session, we didn't intend this to happen, but Amendment 3 and Proposition A were kind of hooked together, even though they're very separate issues. And that's because restaurants and businesses were hell-bent on not allowing people to get a little bit of earned sick time. So there was a lot of like business pressure and Chamber of Commerce type pressure to undo the will of the voters in Prop A. And then Amendment 3, I mean, that the only people behind that would be like the vehemently, you know, anti-choice politicians, quite honestly. And we were told throughout the week that negotiations were still going to happen. Session was supposed to go until Friday night at 6 p.m. And then on Wednesday, midday, we found out that negotiations had been stopped basically, and that they were going to PQ us later that day. So that picture is a picture of me and a new state senator, Patty Lewis, who's a nurse out of Kansas City. We were on the floor when we got PQ'd. A PQ is a rare procedural movement that happens to abruptly cut off debate. And it's not debatable. It's pretty much the equivalent of telling somebody to sit down and shut up and you can't argue about it. It's only been used.
and it's hard, it's rarely used in the Senate. It's used in the House all the time. Like we used to take the betting pool on it. Sometimes it's like 300 times a year for PQs used in the House. But in the Senate, we pride ourselves on being statespeople and working through and negotiating on things. So in the state of Missouri since 1970, the PQ's only been used 20 times, and that includes the 2 times it was used 2 weeks ago. So that tells you how rare it is. So basically, the first thing they PQ'd was to undo Amendment 3. So that was that HJR 73 that will now go to a vote of the people. The governor gets to decide what election that's going to be. I assume it'll be November of 2026, but it's up to the governor to decide that.
Don't put it in August.
Don't put it in August.
It depends on how they word it.
There are a lot of different factors, so it'll be up to the governor to decide politically what benefits his party the most, I think.
They tried to do that with right to work.
Yeah, they put it in August.
They put right to work in August, and
Hoping that would be.
they also put Medicaid expansion in August as well, and that benefited people having it in August. So, and then after the PQ happened on abortion rights, then they PQ'd us on House Bill 567. So it got rid of all of the earned sick time. But the emergency clause didn't pass on that. So right now, all of the workers in our lives are earning some paid sick time until August 28th when the bill goes into effect. So it's going to be painful for people to have earned sick time from May 1st until August 28th, but it is the law of the state right now, this earned sick time. So when you're interacting with people that are low wage workers or hourly workers, make sure they know that they should be keeping track of that.
I have a question on that. If they've earned it, by the time the bill goes into effect and they no longer can earn it, if they have leftover, are they just gonna lose it?
I don't know. That would have to be decided by HR, and I have no idea. But
Okay, I didn't know if there was anything in the bill for that. To protect what they already have.
yeah, I don't know the details. But there is, the minimum wage has been increased, so the only thing is the CPI adjuster didn't stay in when they passed House Bill 567, but the minimum wage did go up technically. So that was one thing that they didn't undo, quite honestly. It could have been worse. They could have rolled back the minimum wage increase as well, and they did not. So that's what happened in the last week of session. And so the Senate was done on Wednesday, and then the House really was done on Thursday. And I think it's the first time in
I think an article says that since 1952, I think was the first in the House and
early.
Yeah.
So is there any recourse for the voters and the voting now that we're actually paying them
Nope.
to do a job that they're not doing?
Nope, it's the ballot.
It's the
I
ballot.
think that's it.
That's it.
Nothing else.
Nope, it's the ballot. Our power as people is before the election. And then we give that power to the people who are in elected office. We have checks and balances. We have the courts, right? We have 3 levels of government, but
That's basically.
we don't. Well, but we don't. Our power's at the ballot box, and then we give it to people, and then they have it, and then we can take it back, or we can keep giving it to them. That's where our power is at the ballot box.
Yeah.
And I think, I think going into this next election, we've got to focus on the substance of the issue. That's how we won with Amendment 3. And guys, we only won barely. We got 51%. Okay, it's going to be a hell of a fight. We've got to fight on the substance. If we keep going on the overturning the will of the voters, that is not a message that's going to resonate, because the only people that can overturn the will of voters are the voters. And voters, you might remember Clean Missouri. We passed that. And then what did we do 2 years later? We undid it. So this idea, it's such an academic argument. It's an esoteric argument to talk about the will of voters, and it's going to get lost. And they've been doing this since at least 1999 with concealed carry, and then puppy mills, and then everything else along the way with no consequence. People, you're in the union. How many union people who vote Republican, right? They vote for Prop A, they vote for minimum wage, they vote for, and then it's not just to pick on union people.
No.
But then people like to have their cake and eat it too. People like
Missouri's
that.
good at that. Missouri's always been good at voting the right way on issues and then turning around and voting the people back into office who brought the issue up.
And I don't see a way out of that unless we focus more on candidates and campaigns and less on these doom loop ballot initiatives that we have every 2 years that consultants love writing and getting paid to do. And, you know, a lot of people make a lot of money off these things. And we keep doing them year after year after year after year. And meanwhile, our numbers stay the same in the House and the Senate and in the legislature and in constitutional offices. We've got to find a way out of that, folks. We've got to find a way out of that.
And I would advocate for targeted messaging. I think it's going to be very important for us to present the substance in a understandable way.
Yeah.
Without calling the other side bad names.
Right. Right.
We can't fight when they lie. No, and we can't really call it lie, because that's just name calling.
Yeah.
It may be true,
No, I mean,
but
they're
yeah,
not lying.
I think just keep the talk through,
Yeah.
straightforward and consistent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The thing that happened, big moments, that kind of blew everything up was the Friday before the last week of session. The budget was due to the governor by that Friday night at 6 p.m. And as usual, we dilly-dallied and it went right kind of down to the wire. And the senators had basically left the building on Friday afternoon, and the House, not Ian, but House Republican politicians refused to bring up House Bill 19, which was the capital improvements budget bill. And it had over $500 million of like projects. And a lot of them are pretty worthy projects, including a new mental health hospital that would add 200 beds over on the Kansas City side, but it would benefit all of us. You know, there was money in there to help keep hospitals open. There was $50 million in there for the Mizzou reactor, and it's a nuclear reactor that helps cancer patients. And all that bill was never brought up. So we went into that last week of session with the Senate and the House really fighting with each other. And then it was just a perfect storm. It was a shit storm. The last week was a terrible week.
What happened to that bill that they didn't consider? Did it just not voted?
It's dead. It's dead.
Dead?
Yeah.
Maybe pieces of it might be brought up in special session.
Yeah.
Potentially, but
Yeah. So
yeah.
is there?
That was gonna be
Okay.
my next question. So I'm gonna skip some things because I love the questions and back and forth there, and it's much more engaging, just me talking. But I think I'm about 20 minutes behind. The other big moment was already mentioned earlier, but happened this week. The Missouri Supreme Court did order the reinstating the abortion ban. That is not, they did not overturn the constitutional amendment that we passed last year. What they said is, until this works its way through the courts and there is a definite decision on the cases before the court, the ban stays in place, where before there was like a temporary lift of the ban. So yeah, Amendment 3 is still on the books. We're going to have to vote on it again next year, though. And yeah, so the other really big thing is this week, special session was called, starts next week. And yeah, I just wanted to ask and give a second of like, what is a special session? What can be considered?
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to start on your side of the building, and we'll see if it ends up on our side of the building. Not sure it will.
So in theory, a special session, which I think is technically called an extraordinary session, it's to work on something that happens outside of our normal business hours of January to mid-May, so that we can deal with something big. But in this case, there's no need to have a special session because we could have taken care of all of this during regular session if the Republicans had been able to get their act together. So, you know, we've known about the need or the desire to put some kind of a package together for the Chiefs and the Royals. We've known about it since Kansas put together their star bonds more than a year ago. So why it's almost June and we have to suddenly have something done by the end of June is ridiculous. Like, who does that in a workplace? You just ignore deadlines. So there's really no reason for the special session except for the governor and his party couldn't get their work done from January to mid-May. I was particularly offended during the governor's press conference on Tuesday when he acted like he was calling a special session to help take care of our neighbors in North St. Louis City for tornado recovery. I was very offended by that because that he was going to have a special session anyway, and to act like he was doing it because he was compassionate, just really rubbed it the wrong way. And then like Representative Mackey said, some of those things that were in that capital improvement House bill, that House Bill 19, a few of those things have kind of been reincarnated. I think it's almost going to be used as like ballot candy in a way to try to get people to vote yes on the stadium thing is what I suspect.
Yeah, and then you've got the Freedom Caucus on your side tweeting out today and talking about their insistence that there be other tax cuts to property taxes, tax cuts to, you know, our ever shrinking pool of revenue that pays for our schools and pays for kids with disabilities and pays for, you know, people in nursing homes and pays for Medicaid and all those other things. And they seem to be putting up a fight saying we're not going to vote for this or play ball on this unless you drain our resources even more. And so, yeah, I don't know what's gonna. It doesn't seem like people are going to pick up the pieces and just shake hands and call it a day. Maybe they will. I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, stadium funding, maybe other tax issues, and then maybe some of the leftover issues from that bill that died on the capital improvements bill and the tornado relief, which is $25 million for 30 counties. So it is not just St. Louis City tornado relief. It's $25 million. There's been a lot of tornadoes all around the state in the last 2 months. And so a lot.
Can they, and under your rules, can they consider only the things that the governor has proposed? In other words, they can't bring up. So if he hasn't put in there that funding bill.
Well, so it's everything's up for interpretation, right? So, you know, I think anything related to how we're going to spend our money and how we're going to make that stadium money feasible, I think is well within the call. What I don't think is in the call is initiative petition reform. You know, there are people who want to bring that up too. I don't think that's in the
And
call.
he put numeric caps in his call, like to say 25 million for tornado impacted counties. He can modify his call at any point. He should at least add a zero to that 25 million. And he can do that at any point.
Yeah, that's.
But no, you're absolutely right. Like there was nothing in there about initiative petition reform. If that's.
But he could amend it.
He could amend it, right?
Could amend it. I forgot.
But it's not there right now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, just skip to the next. So we've had a lot of really good back and forth. A lot of it has been focused on the substance or like around the conversations we were already having. Wanted to give 5-10 minutes or so for any other questions that you may have for elected officials.
Just lobbying.
Yeah.
Lobbying.
Yeah.
You talk about lobbying and lobbyists, and does it matter, or should we pay no attention to that and listen to what you said so clearly? The number one thing that everybody in this room should have in their head is we need to elect Democrats.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. And I really am being honest with you when I say the initiative petition process gets in our way, guys. It's really in our way right now. As long as folks that have their cake and eat it too, we're going to be stuck in this cycle. I had people on my street that had my keto signs and yes on 3 signs in their front yard. If you're not voting for the person in office based on the issues you care about the most, we are going to be stuck in the status quo. Consultants will keep getting rich off the IP. We'll keep having the same fights over and over. They'll keep doing everything they've been doing since 1999. We're just going to be stuck. They face no electoral consequences for overturning these votes time and time again because we get to fix them when we want to.
Well, not only that, but how many House and Senate seats were unopposed?
Yeah, not a lot. We've done a really good job of recruiting candidates. I want to say we had, gosh, I'm really terrible at remembering the numbers, but we had a vast majority of them had a name on the line. We've got a lot of even really uncompetitive rural seats with Democrats who time and time again will not just put their name on the line, but will campaign in their districts, go to town meetings, show up at events like this at the library. We've actually done a really good job of finding folks in every corner of the state to run and who continue to do that. There's very few seats that are uncontested.
I think the bigger challenge is the way the districts are drawn.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have the best candidate in the world. Some of these districts are going to be like 75-80% Republican, but we also, there's Democratic seats like that too.
Yeah.
Like Steve Roberts, one of my Senate colleagues, his district is like close to 90% Democrat. You know, so we have very few. There's probably only about 24 seats in the entire state out of both the House and the Senate that are truly competitive.
Yeah.
So out of almost 200 seats, 25 of those are truly competitive. And then everything else is just the primaries are where the real action is.
And the Republicans figured that out a long time ago. They can spend a little money outstate and take control of every state legislature, which is what they've done.
Well, and I don't want to ignore your question about lobbyists either. There's a lot of different kinds of lobbyists that we interact with. The vast majority of them, I think, are knowledgeable and passionate and, truly represent, needs in the community. I work with a lot of lobbyists. My old boss, former Senator Joan Gray, used to call them white hat lobbyists and black hat lobbyists. So, there is a distinction, just like in any workplace, but we interact with lobbyists every day when we're in session that represent, entities like, the school districts and the Alzheimer's Association and, speech and language pathologists, things like that. So.
Well, there was some years ago, I've forgotten their name, a great influence from, I've now forgotten their name.
Like Alec?
Yeah. Alec.
Yeah.
They were powerful in Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
They
continues.
don't necessarily have boots on the ground, but there are these think tanks on both sides of the aisle, because we have our own that are very active in putting out sample legislation and things like that. But
It's who has more money.
Yeah, a lot of what those groups do is sample legislation and sort of the 50 state roadmap for what they want to see done. But to Tracy's right about the number of competitive districts right now. But look at Jefferson County, right? I'm going to go back to the union thing. I'm going to go back to the IP thing. 10, 15 years ago, you weren't a pro-labor Republican. Jefferson County elected Democrats. Yeah. They sent Jay Nixon to the AG's office and to the governor's office. When we got to this era where so many people, and I'll go all the way down to the Boot Hill. We had Steve Hodges down to the Boot Hill as the state rep up until 2010 when he got wiped out. When you've got people who actually have to think about the issues and not just the people and not just the Democratic brand nationally, and they get AOC out of their head and Nancy Pelosi out of their head, and they actually have to think about this person is going to be for unions or this person isn't, versus, I can go ahead and vote for Mary Elizabeth Coleman because I can also get to vote for Prop 8. I can have it both ways. Okay. That's going to continue. We can get a lot more competitive districts.
Solve that.
It's a good question.
Okay, now, I worked on right to work.
Yep.
I was part of the union coalition that I took care of the 2nd Congressional District.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was UFCW, Dave Cook.
Yeah.
Okay. If it wasn't for the initiative petition, we would be a right to work state. Okay.
Yeah.
And no, guaranteed, because I went up against some groups that, they were busing people from out of town to fill the gallery in Jeff City to keep the union people from being able to have a seat. Okay. If we didn't have the initiative petition process for us to have a voice, well, how do we solve that problem? Because we're not going to get everybody to vote for a Democratic candidate.
So,
okay, that is a long-term process to take a county from red to blue or red to purple.
Yeah.
Or the other way around, from blue to red. Okay, because that's what Jeff County did.
Yep.
All right, Jeff County started changing in 2008.
Yep.
So, in that scenario, we're going to get a lot of things that we don't want if we don't have that process. So, we're caught as people, as voters, we're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yep. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, because we don't have the power to go, well, yes, we do. We could get arrested, but I've sat up at Jeff City. But
Unfortunately, I think you can have to speak out on social media.
So, really quick, if I could just interject here really quick. I got Stevens pulling up our vision. I talked to you about the mission statement earlier. We also have a vision statement also. And I think that kind of hits on the answer to your question and then kind of speaks to what you're talking about also. at the end of the day, you know, as a central committee, like I told you, we recruit, train, cultivate candidates, right? And I mean, right now, these guys are outnumbered. You know, y'all are like 120 to 30 something.
111 to 52, I think is our.
Yeah.
24.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can,
Oh, I know.
like, we have to get,
I've been involved. I know the numbers. I mean,
like,
come on.
we gotta get, well, never for you, for real, really, but we really gotta get good people elected to office, right? And since I'm a Democrat, I would really like good Democrats. The problem that we've had is that some of our candidates have to run 2 or 3 cycles just to get the kind of momentum they need to even move the DPI, or, you know, in the political, they always say, well, just move the needle, keep moving the needle, right? Well, we can break the needle with the right candidate. It happens all the time. Nobody thought about it go anywhere, right? And there are so many candidates out there across the state who nobody had a clue that they were going to win the district that they were going to win. So my challenge to all of you here on this part is, and then we'll get to the vision statement. My challenge to you all is I need you to send me those folks who are Girl Scout. Yeah, well, they're going to get you. We are. All right, we're talking about the Royal League. But we need folks who are, you know, leaders in their communities, right? Folks who are leading PTAs, folks who, you know, are always at a charity thing, right? Folks with a little bit of name recognition. That's why I love teachers, right? Because everybody remembers their teachers. You know what I'm saying? But folks who have a little cachet behind them. So it's not just some no-name person that nobody's ever seen before putting signs in yards, right? We got to have someone who has that kind of buy-in already at the start. And then the other part of that is we can't give up, right? The numbers are against us. The odds are against us. They tell us it's red. That's why we got the blue dot stuff over here, because we're the blue dots in this big red sea, right? But our vision statement.
So our vision is to build a modern, sustainable political infrastructure that recruits, trains, and supports a strong pipeline of Democratic candidates while fostering deep community engagement. That's our vision. That's the leadership of St. Charles County that set us our direction.
So we're going to keep digging in with you all. We're going to keep inviting good folks up. Ian comes up every time we ask him. He's been out. I love being out here. It's not good time we ask him. But almost, is this your first time out here?
This meeting, yeah.
Give me back. Give me back. But we're going to keep digging in. Go ahead.
So on Nextdoor, which is an app, the whole thing about we don't have kids, so we don't know anything about the schools here. But the whole the vote, the special election that we had for the school board played out on Nextdoor, and the 2 people who kept the board, I guess, from falling apart were actually elected. I think 2 people who kept the book bans out and those kind of things.
Which district are you in?
It's Francis Howell.
Francis Howell. Yeah, so I see Carolina, Friends of the Central Committee.
Overturning of the minimum wage as well as the abortion ban.
Yeah.
It's just been huge on there. Then there's some guy, I don't know who he represents, but his name is Mike Coslow.
Yeah, so absolutely. So
Okay. All of these people convinced that voters didn't understand the language of the bill. Because nobody.
to your point, and to Ian's point also, right? We got to get away from that language of overturning the will of the voters, right?
Right.
I'm going to look at every one of you and tell you that the representatives of St. Charles County think you're stupid. Like, they don't think you know what you're taking when you go to the ballot. And we need to put a name to that, right? So we need to talk about Mike Coslow. We need to talk about Terry Violet. We need to talk about Christian Burner.
Travis Wilson.
All of them. All of them. We need to name those names because
We're not on there. I mean, the logo and or the presence was not on there. But if you read the comments, all the people started hopping on him and saying, "No, we voted for this, and we're in your district." And so, my point is that, showing up and talking about the actual. I know we need Democrats, but we also need people who are talking about the issues and can explain them in detail.
I think a non-traditional space like that too, that's great. I mean, it makes me think of like all the podcasts that a lot of our national candidates are starting to go to. And, we think of social media and we think of like, at least somebody my age and older, thinking about Facebook and things like that and those sorts. But I mean, Nextdoor is not inherently a political space, but of course it has political conversations happening on there. And there's plenty of other platforms like that, which are a great way to start that conversation. I think that's a great point.
Well, so what I was thinking was putting this information on there. You can just turn the comments off. But you.
Yeah.
Or post recent things political. You just put facts out there and people like me will pick up on that and repost it and start. You're watching how information is distributed. There you go.
So
Not a comment.
this all was a great conversation to sort of wrap things up and focus on like, how do we take action? What do we do? The answer is get involved with your local Dem organization. You're all here, so you've taken the first step with that. But the bigger thing is coalition building, community building, to let people know that there are Dems, we are involved in the community. And because in my opinion, a lot of this is just a community and brand issue. People need to know that we're here, we care, we're part of the community, and we are trying to do what's best. So we're looking for people to run. You want to run? Yes.
In the state of Missouri, because I've been here for over 40 years. And this is the first time I've heard of a town hall meeting or whatever you have. The only reason we are here tonight is that I got an email from the St. Charles Democratic Committee.
There's going to be more.
I've been invited by Bob Andre and been on one of his town hall meetings, and it was the most ridiculous thing I ever had. And I've learned in 40 years of living in this state. You better start advertising somehow, because I'm here only because of one message in 40 years.
Okay, that is a good message for us.
Message received.
Yes, we got it. And I'm sorry, y'all weren't here at the beginning, but that librarian is like strict. And our reservation for this room stops at 8. And so I thank you all very much for coming. Please thank our representative. Yes. And thank you all for coming and showing.
So if you want to help, or sorry, you got to get out of the way. I use my teacher voice, Alex. It's your scientist voice ain't working. Whatever the hell you want. Is he a scientist or something?